I'm removing the choke tube to get it out of the way. I flatten these little protrusions of where the idle screw are supposed to be. These carbs covered different models and did have idle screws in them. They are cast for them, so we are going to put them in. This is called the Tor's Delete Kit. So we will drill these up. There's one drilled up. Carbs will sit like this, so we want the idle screws on the outside. So this one will be on, for this carb, idle screw will be here. For this carb, the idle screw will be over here. Make sure they're on the outside of the motor so you can get to them. After drilling the holes, we want to cut the threads. So the kit comes with the tap, the drill, and the idle screws. Fully disassembled this carburetor and squirt brake cleaner or carb cleaner through all the holes here. Just take everything out and get it good and clean. The biggest thing I see with these carburetors, this style of Banshee stock carburetor, is if you have stock pilots, these jets always plug. You have to run a wire up through it. You'll see it in my other videos where I do that. I'm not doing it on this one because it is getting new jets, because it's going on a ported motor. So we're just going through cleaning, replacing a couple things, and putting it back together so it'll run that little ported cylinder setup. It's going to be a stock cylinder setup. The other thing I see worn out in these carbs is the needle and seat. This is the seat. This is the needle. And you can see how the rubber wears out and gets a line in it, and it keeps it from sealing the fuel from coming into the carb, so the carb will continuously just run fuel out the overflow tubes. Everybody tries replacing the gasket or adjusting the floats, which will never seal off the gas. Sometimes it might need a little float adjustment, or the floats stick when the bikes sit a long time, so you start it up and usually the vibration will kick it loose and it'll start sealing up. So if it's spewing gas right as you start it up, you can even tap the bowls with the back of a screwdriver or something like that. Get the floats to unstick, because sitting in there with oil and gas, they will tend to stick and fuel will keep dumping out. So we're going to start by putting a new needle and seat in this guy, because that was worn out badly. Pops right in. We'll get the little screw and holder, holds down the seat. Float, needle, pin, we will get the jets. We'll stick this choke back in. It takes a 12mm wrench to snug it down. Spring insert for the air screw, little brass flat air screw. I'll screw it until it goes all the way down, lightly seat it, and then I will back it off one turn. If your carb has all its stock parts, you'll have one little washer for the main jet and a splash guard that goes over the main jet and down the pilot hole. I will get the jets for this. With my MX Hardcore or Dune port, I always run a 330 or 340 main jet, just depending on where it's at, if it's on the East Coast or West Coast, or what kind of pipes it has. So 330 main jets for this ported motor, and 30 pilots. That's the only two jets in these carbs. Pretty simple. I mean, it does have a slide and a needle, with the needle jet, but 6mm hex, main jet. Tighten it right down. Don't crank on those too hard. Those are brass. They just need to be seated and snugged. That's it for the bottom of this one. It is ready to go. We'll check the float height here. Okay, checking the float height. It says 20 to 22mm for the factory manual, so you just drop it and get on the shoulder of the carb where the gasket sits, without the gasket being there, and it should be 20 to 22. If not, you can adjust it by bending this tab up or down. Then you close her up. Put the old idle screw in. Okay, I'm going to set the slide height here. I close it all the way down so you can't see through it. And then I will hit it with the idle screw by just turning the idle screw in until I see a little daylight or I see the slide move. I like to lock the idle screw at 1.5 turns from when it hits the slide. So it'll hit the slide. Once it engages the slide, 1.5 turns. The air screw, 1 turn out with the 30 pilot, and that usually does it with my port job. Do the same thing to this guy. Seat in, screw with the hold down, old needle. You can see how heavily grooved that is. It'll never stop the flow of gas. We'll get the new needle. Pin. Pilot. Main. 330. Main for this setup. Pilot hole, there we go. We definitely want to check the floats on these. 20 to 22 in the resting position. All right. Spring. And last, air screw. Last, idle screw. slide in there to see, make sure it's all the way down. And once it engages, 1.5 turns. And I'll lock it down. These guys are all done, set up and ready to run. We just have to finish the motor up. So I'm boring it and honing it right now, and I'll try to remember to put it on the degree wheel. Show you guys how to degree in a port job, or just take the degree reading of the cylinders you have.